Thank you for joining me on the Sutherland Report once again. I'm continuing my political series where I have the privilege to be interviewing Reform UK candidates around this wonderful country of ours here in the UK. So thank you for joining me, and I am privileged now to bring on the candidate for South Suffolk, and Beverley England will tell us where South Suffolk is and when we will have a wonderful conversation. So thank you very much, Beverley. Thank you, Beverley, for joining me today on the Sutherland Report. I'm delighted to meet you by the digital media. So if I bring up the maps, and then we can explain where South Suffolk is. I've been using this map for most interviews. So how would you describe where we are? Are we just on that rump on the right hand side, Beverly?
Yeah, we are. We're sort of east on that side.
Okay, brilliant. And I'll then bring up this South Suffolk, illustrated by that beautiful colour red. And then this is your constituency.
That's it.
That's it. So this is the constituency where Beverly will be standing. Beverly, thank you again for joining me. And if you could just tell us why you are standing for Reform UK, and of course specifically within the South Suffolk.
I live in South Suffolk. I've not lived here long. I used to live in the county next door. And I decided to stand because I cannot abide any longer the shocking quality of our political class. I've actually come to the conclusion that it can't be the mismanagement of the UK and all the policies can no longer be put down to incompetence. I think it's borderline purposeful destruction, and I'm sick of it. And I thought, rather than sitting moaning, I'll do something about it, because I've got a son who's 27 and I've got a couple of young nieces, and I'm not prepared to accept what is heading down the tracks for them, but also for other people's families who are perhaps unaware of what is happening. So I decided, with Reform UK, they're the only political party that have got common sense policies. During the Brexit debates, I used to listen to Richard Tice, Nigel Farage, and Richard Tice always had completely sane ideas when it came to Brexit. And the debate was very biased in towards Remain, which used to send me into orbit. And the final straw on the Brexit debate was having George Osborne threaten us that if we dared vote to leave, our interest rates would rocket and our house prices would plummet. So Reform, for me, when Richard Tice formed the party together with Paul Oakden and Nigel Farage, just everything that they say, they're common sense people, and that's what we need back in UK politics.
Beverly, just to say that, of course, George Osborne was the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, wasn't he?
Yeah,
at that
that's
time,
right.
and like
Yeah.
many people, throwing threats out. So, would you describe the area where you live, and you were in the next county? Would you describe it as a high Brexit leave voting?
Yes,
Or was it
South Suffolk is a Leave constituency, so I make no excuses for also being a Brexiteer. I am a Brexiteer. I voted on the basis that financially the whole thing didn't stack up. You can't possibly have 5 countries paying in and over 20 removing money. And also, I believe in democracy. I'm a libertarian, and I want democracy. I want true democracy. And you get that by voting people in and out. And the EU was becoming more and more a sort of dictatorship, which is I mean, they're showing their true colours now, actually, with they want to get rid of the veto rights for sovereign countries. And the veto rights will be given to 5 appointed people. That is not democracy, that is a dictatorship. And I'm very glad that the vote leave won. And I know it was a narrow margin, and I know people are annoyed. But the majority of people that you spoke to who are annoyed that we left the EU are annoyed because it means they can't stay in Europe longer than 90 days. That's their main point of argument, which is ridiculous, actually. You can stay for longer than 90 days. You can apply for a visa, and you can also apply for residency if you want to live there. It is more involved. There's a bit of red tape involved, but I don't think that they were good enough reasons to vote Remain. I want as I said, I want a proper democracy. I want it for this country, and the EU was going down a route where that was not going to be at all possible. So, yes, this is a Brexit constituency. The incumbent, now he's not the MP, but James Cartledge, Conservative, wanted Remain. And I've spoken to many constituents here who say that he's a very nice chap, but he doesn't reflect their wishes when it comes to the EU and Brexit. So maybe I hope to get their votes.
Well done you. Beverly, when you're out and about, you're having these your conversation with the constituents. And I know that, you know, your campaign has started in earnest. We have just announced, of course, last week, suddenly an election on the 4th of July. What are the concerns that the constituents of South Suffolk are bringing to you? What are the conversations that you are having? What are their major concerns?
The biggest concern is immigration and the impact it's having on our infrastructure and services. People can see that they are suffering as a direct result of legal and illegal immigration. The legal immigration is taking away from our services, so everything is disintegrating. And then the illegal immigration sends them into orbit because of the amount of money that's being put up to house and feed these people. So they just feel it's unfair that you can come to this country illegally and then, get shelter, accommodation, 3 meals a day, when we've got people sleeping rough on the streets. So they're concerned about immigration. And interestingly, one of our policies is on education. They pick up on this a lot, is they see on my leaflet that we are against transgender ideology to be taught in schools. And as soon as they say that, they say, right, we're voting for you. Because again, they feel that they don't have any voice. They don't want this ideology to be put on children. They want their children to be safeguarded. And this should not be part of the education system. And they also pick out that single sex spaces in schools are really important as well. It seems to me preposterous that, I don't know how many schools actually, but a lot of schools during the pandemic suddenly made the boys and girls toilets single sex facilities, which is just, why? I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. So education is a big topic, and immigration. I would say those are the main two. And of course, we've got the potholes argument, because everyone is suffering from those. And everyone feels poorer. You speak to business people and they've never worked so hard, and they find that the rewards aren't there, and it's a real struggle with regulation, red tape, and the state interfering. And Reform UK want a small state. We want them to butt out of our lives. We don't want a nanny state. We want to govern our own lives, make our own decisions. But more and more, it seems that the state wants to take more and more control. And again, I'm absolutely opposed to this. I want it to stop. I want them to go away. So those are the main things that I'm talking to people when I knock on doors.
Do parents feel that they can't go into schools and challenge what is actually being taught to their children? Do they feel that they don't have that autonomy anymore as parents? They don't have that power.
I don't think it occurs to them, quite honestly.
That's interesting.
Which I find, yeah, that they just kind of, I think people are so busy trying to make ends meet, head down, working, that they haven't got time to think. People are really under pressure at the moment with the cost of living crisis. They, even my sister with my nieces, she didn't realise that the youngest one hadn't been able to go to the toilet at school for 6 months because none of them were told that the toilet facilities were now amalgamated into single sex. So I don't know. I don't know what it is with parents that they don't think to question. I would.
So, well, absolutely, as I would, and I have done, and I'm sure that you have done. So there's an important thing there to encourage parents to find out what's being taught to their children, to find out what's going on, and to
Yeah.
become governors and to engage and push back. Beverly, could you describe the area to say what are the main sources of employment within the area? Because I could make certain assumptions, but it's important to hear it to hear it from you.
There's no real big industry here. There's many small businesses, retail and small manufacturing businesses. And obviously farming is a big thing in Suffolk. So those are the three main employment positions here.
When you say small sort of industry units, what kind of small businesses specifically industries are they?
You've got sort of like car servicing, body
Yeah,
shops, laundry
yeah.
services. You've got farm shops and high street retail. That's the main businesses throughout South Suffolk.
So what about the opportunities for young people and young people's in employment? Is that a concern for your constituents, as they're
I
looking in the
I
future?
haven't spoken directly with anyone about that, but what I did speak to. There's every Saturday in Sudbury. There's a market, and the community police have a stall there. And I spoke to them about, what's happening with the youth and is knife crime a real problem? And they're making real inroads with the youngsters in and around Sudbury. But one remark that one of the PCs made to me, which resonates, is that there's nothing for the youngsters to do. He said, when I was growing up, we had a community football field, and we would just go there in the summer, take a sandwich, kick our balls around all day, and just play sport. He said, but that's gone. And I think that is a shame. That needs sport for the youth, teaches them about team playing, discipline. It's good for their health, both physical and mental health. And if they're occupied with something, then they're not going to get into trouble doing something that they shouldn't be doing. But I really take my hat off to particularly the young PC in Sudbury, who is winning over the youngsters and speaking some common sense to them. So good on them. And I shall go back and see him probably this Saturday.
That is excellent. It'd be interesting to know what techniques he's using. You know what the process is that he is actually working through there.
He's young
Mm.
and he just talks to them. they may not have anyone to talk to. If their parents are busy full-time working, some of them are obviously holding down a couple of jobs to make ends meet, then the children are kind of left to their own devices. So basically, he's just having frank conversations with them, telling them, that some of the things that they're getting up to is wrong, but he's building up a trust and a respect between him and the youth, which is brilliant, and we need more of that.
Because would you describe your constituency, excuse my ignorance, as actually quite large geographically? Because how does is there enough police services? Do you need more, policemen, women on the ground? How
I think
stretched
we
is
do.
the?
I think we do throughout the country. I think we
Mm.
need more visual police on the ground. We used to years ago know who our local Bobby was. I mean, I'm that old. So yeah, it's a good thing to have. But I think the police have got a tough job with recruitment. They're not recruiting as many. I can't remember what the stats are, but they are hugely down on numbers. And we
Be-
need community police officers who, know who a couple of the bad eggs are, can talk to them, um, and know what's going on within the community, so they can perhaps stop some crime before it actually happens.
Because up and down the country, and we remember that under David Cameron and Theresa May pushing this through, there was a policy to start to cut police numbers. And it took a
Mm,
while for people to realize that. Of course, in an area that you are, e.g., everyone focuses on London. If all that's okay, then that's fine. But the
yeah.
resources have been cut around the country. How, and I know what the train times of travelling to London from Suffolk. How do people view London from where you are? Do they feel that it's like I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do they feel it's a different country? Does it, and of course, it's not reflecting their concerns politically, but do they feel that it is a completely on a different planet to where they are?
The only discussions I've had really are about the re-election of Sadiq Khan, and people are aghast and wonder how on earth he got re-elected, because it's got the highest crime, the highest knife crime. Um, when I've been to London recently, Charlotte Street and around there used to be quite a nice area just off Baker Street.
Mm.
It is filthy. It is covered with bags of rubbish. The pavements are all stained. It is an absolute mess. And this is all under Sadiq Khan, who's now been re-elected again. Um, it's preposterous. No one wants the ULEZ. No one wants the 20-mile-per-hour zones. And yet he carries on regardless.
How
It's,
is ULEZ 20-mile-an-hour zones? Is that within your constituency? Are those policies being pushed within there
they're
as well?
being discussed, but they haven't implemented any yet. Um, there's a big discussion at the moment about charging for parking in Sudbury, which we definitely don't want. The shopkeepers there are already, they're facing high taxes, high rates, lower footfall due to the cost of living crisis. And the last thing that they want is their core customers being put off by paying for parking, because they'll go somewhere else, like Long Melford, where parking is free. And we had another incident lately where the local council in Sudbury wanted to have, and this is their words, an experiment for 3 months this year, this summer, and next summer, to block the parking on Market Hill and have a cafe culture for 3 months. So they were going to drive away people that love to whiz into Sudbury, do some shopping, free parking, and whiz off. So that would have all been stopped for their experiment. And then they were going to review it in 2 years. I mean, these people clearly have not run a business. There was a big furore about it, and actually, due to the big furore, The people have won and the whole thing has been pulled, but not after serious money has been spent on a survey. I think it was 40 odd thousand was spent on a survey when they could have taken a clipboard to the business owners and the general public and asked their opinion, and they would all have said no, they don't want it. And then they're completely horrified when the whole scheme now has been pulled. And they've said in the newspaper that it's caused a waste of money. Well, they have caused the wasted money. They should never have pushed this through anyway. And to actually label it an experiment was, to me, astonishing. They're experimenting with people's livelihoods. They don't seem to live in the real world, some of these people, but there you go. We've won that one. The next one is the parking issue. So hopefully we'll win that to stop, paid parking.
And it means that you've got to be vigilant about these things. And you've raised a very,
Yes.
very important point
Yeah.
that, and this is why you are running, because you want to represent people, you want to engage with people, you want to
Yeah.
hear what they're saying. And if a
Yeah.
council are not going around with a clipboard and knocking on the businesses saying what are your needs, and they would immediately say, can we lower the business rate? Do they, just out of interest, do there is a lack of consultation? What of how how big are the layers of sort of local government government in the area? How much money do you think that is costing you? What savings could be made? Are there exorbitant salaries?
Well, there's huge savings to be made. I mean, one of the Reform UK policies is we want to cut government spending. We want £5 in every 100 to be cut. There's massive wastage. We've got these diversity panels and all sorts of quangos that, quite frankly, need just to be stopped. It's a waste of public money. They seem to spend taxpayers' money without I'm sure if you said to them, actually, it's going to come out of your own pocket, a lot of this stuff would be stopped immediately. But in order to fund all the changes that we want to make, we want to slash government waste, so save on that, £5 in every 100. We want to stop the voluntary interest on QE loans that the Bank of England pay. The third one is we want to stop all the taxation on net zero. So that will save us 146 billion, which will finance important things nationally, and just stop the rot, basically, which I think is all very good.
Yeah, no, thank you, Beverly, just laying that out. What about the other thing, this whole thing of net zero? And are you finding in your area that farming fields are now filled with, as the wonderful Rob Reaney calls it, double glazing over
Yeah.
farmland? Are you seeing a load of solar panels and all this kind of
Yes, yes.
right?
It's shocking. Hundreds of acres of agricultural land being given up for solar panels. In fact, a friend of mine is fighting the Seneca one. He's a physicist, Edmund Fordham. He was going to be running for reform, but he's up to his eyes in fighting Seneca and another development in Ireland. I think the Seneca development is thousands of acres. What he says is it's disingenuous that they're not actually solar parks, they are battery parks. So there's one in South Suffolk that's been applied for, Glen Valley. Boxed Estates are wanting to have 100 acres of their land turned over to solar park. But there's 12 battery stations on the site, and the battery stations are about 4 meters by 12 meters, that store the electricity that can sometimes be generated when we've got some sun. And as you know, throughout this year so far, we've hardly seen the sun. We're one of the darkest countries within this hemisphere. So it is ludicrous to be using green fields for, industrializing green fields with solar panels. And in fact, I've forgotten his name, but there was an eminent physicist, a mathematician who sadly died, who lived in Cambridge. He did an interview with The Guardian years ago. I think it was 2016. And he was an advisor to the government at some point on energy. And he makes the observation in the interview that if you covered the entire land and oceans in wind turbines and solar, you would still only get 2 kilowatts per person per hour energy when each person takes 125 kilowatts. So he said the whole argument of upscaling simply falls apart. He said the maths don't stack up. So we should be looking at some clean energy, but Reform UK are actually saying rightly that we want to scrap net zero. Apparently, the UK is responsible for 1% of greenhouse gases. Net zero is going to impoverish us all, and people die of cold, not from heat. But the whole climate change agenda needs to be openly debated, whereas at the moment you mentioned climate change and the whole you're either on this camp or that camp, and if you're not in this one then you just get shut down. But Reform UK are absolutely right in saying no to net zero, whereas Labour are going to push ahead with net zero. And there's a hysterical article in The Conservative Woman just last week. Ed Miliband is saying that he wants everyone who's got a gas boiler, that's 28 million gas boilers, he wants them removed from people's houses to meet net zero. And they'll legislate for this to happen. And if you don't take up what they say, they will legislate to make it illegal and you could face prison. I mean, the man is not really on planet Earth, and he looks forward when net zero is achieved, and he would like to see statues built to commemorate those that have sacrificed so much for net zero, which is Greta Thunberg, Chris Packham. And he wants us all to celebrate in the streets. Honestly, I don't know what, maybe he was on drugs on this day, I'm not sure, but it sounds fantastical. He wants to celebrate in the streets long into the night by candlelight. Notice candlelight, not electricity. Celebrating with, what was it? Organic turnips and potato wine. I mean, this is what he said, and honestly, this is what you're going to get with Labour. But it did make me think, actually. He obviously thinks we shouldn't have any electricity if we have to celebrate by candlelight. And when you think about the wine and the food that he's listing, does it not remind you of medieval feudalism and serfdom? Hello, people, wake up, please. This is not where I want to be heading.
Beverly, you just explained that brilliantly. And that article that you're referring to, which I have read, which is actually quite wonderful, and Conservative Woman Home, etc. Awesome job. That we have to remind ourselves, because he was leader of the Labour Party.
Yeah.
I've forgotten the years. Before then Corbyn bloody blah, and he then won that from his brother David Miliband, who went off to America.
Yeah.
But the fact that he is pushing all this, and we then have to remember, I believe that his father had very left wing
Marxist. He was a Marxist. Yeah, this is all heading towards communism. I've got Polish friends who say they remember communism. They smell it a mile off. They've lived it. When they were young, they had nothing. And they can see that this is where this is all heading. And I agree with them. But we need to stop it. And people generally do want to stop it. I think Reform are going to get a lot of votes. And so hopeful that we get some seats, because I honestly think that if people drag their heels and don't bother to go out and vote, we will end up with a Labour government. And by the next general election, I think it will be practically game over. It will be unrecognisable, this country. It will be such a mess. And it's going to be difficult to come back from it. Also with central bank digital currency steaming down the tracks. You know, I'm very interested in local issues in South Suffolk, but more importantly, national issues are going to crush this country. And that's why I'm standing up. The biggest worry for me is at the moment central bank digital currency. Rishi Sunak was the poster boy for this as Chancellor. And that is why I believe he ended up in the position where he was Prime Minister without the vote from the people and without votes from from Conservative members. He is pushing CBDCs and branding it as a Brit coin to make it sound trendy and acceptable. It is not acceptable. The mainstream media are not discussing this at all, and it needs to be discussed, because once this is brought in, your freedoms have gone. It's a state-controlled money token, as you probably know, and the state will control how you spend your money. And I find that the most imperative, important thing to stand up and to stop. And you speak to anyone in the street, if I'm walking the dog and say, do you know the government is going to eventually get rid of cash and it's all going to be central bank digital currency? They just assume it's the same as tapping your Barclays card or your NatWest card. And I say, no, it's a state-controlled money token, which could also be time limited, and they can program how you spend your money. And then people are absolutely horrified. But it seems such a preposterous idea and so far off, and it's not far off. We've already had a consultation paper done by HM Treasury, and it's all being kept very quiet and under the radar. And all countries are looking into this. I think there's a couple that have stood up and said that they're not going to have it. Whether you like Trump or not, he has actually stood up and said he will not allow CBDC to go ahead in the USA. So there is some hope there. But so if he gets in,
I do apologise, sorry, but you know, there you are on the streets having these conversations, walking the dog, having these conversations, and this whole education is going on, because there's a link here. It may be time limited when you can spend the money, but also if you're not thinking the right things according to the power, according to government, then you may not get the digital money, or it may be turned off. So
yes,
it's people realizing this kind of thing. And you make a wonderful point where people are so busy trying to earn a living, keep the
yeah,
roof over their head, that
yeah,
they then don't get time to think about these things. And
yeah.
that is what you are doing, because you're thinking about all of these things and you wish to get out there what you're doing to inform people of what is going on. So, Beverly, between now and the 4th of July, and I hope
Yeah.
that we can then have a conversation again. What is your plan? How are you getting around to the best of your ability all of your constituency? What is the ground game?
Well, I was already ahead of the game in as much as I'd got 50,000 leaflets printed. I've got 250 posters printed. I've got a fantastic team of volunteers delivering leaflets, and they have now been doing that for the last 4 weeks. 24, I think 24 people growing to probably 26. So I'm going to be out knocking on doors, posting leaflets from now, until the general election. But we're running out of time to do hustings, I think. But if I can get some hustings organised, I'd like to. I went to the Suffolk show yesterday and I met with Framlingham farmers and the NFU. The NFU, obviously, all these membership organisations as well as businesses need to be impartial with their political views. I absolutely get that. But I'm really hoping that the NFU will organise a hustings, and I want to attend that. But I want to go together with Rupert Lowe because I really want to target the farming community. I could organise a presentation next week for all my supporters. I can send out an email blast and get 250 people in a hall, no problem. But those are the people who are already converted. I want to hit the people who are disenchanted Conservative voters, and most of them are. I don't see, I've not heard from one Conservative voter who approve of the last 14 years, not one. So I want to get Conservative voters to listen to what Reform have to say, rather than listening to the lazy slurs of mainstream media who call us out to be racist and just anti-immigration. That's completely untrue. And I want the farming community to know that we're on their side because we've got brilliant policies for farming. And Rupert Lowe, who is now standing in Lowestoft, he is a businessman, I'm a businesswoman, but he is also a farmer. So if I've got time, I want to get a hustings where we can approach the farming community, if at all possible. But it's all, everyone's busy now getting their own campaigns off the ground, so it might not be possible. But I'll just continue to knock on doors. Even at the Suffolk show yesterday, it was interesting. There was a poultry farming organisation that wants to encourage more young people into that particular farming area. And we want to encourage, Reform UK have a policy to encourage young people into farming. And when I started to speak to the ladies there, they are already on board with Reform. And she said, in fact, her daughter flies for Jet2 and was on a flight the other day. There was a group of people saying that they're going to, while they're on the flight, they were discussing voting Labour. And her daughter said, why do you want to vote Labour? You need to vote Reform. And by the end of the flight, they turned around to her and said, we are going to vote Reform. Hurrah! So I love stories like that. But
absolutely.
Yeah, I think people, once people realise what we're really about, because we're getting a bit more mainstream media traction now, but there has been a policy to keep us very quiet. We've got a lot to say, but there's not many interviews that we're getting invited along to, because I think the establishment is very concerned that they like the status quo of the two main parties, but that just gives you an illusion of democracy. It's not real democracy. Plus, both two parties are guilty of saying anything to get elected. And then once they're elected, they completely dismiss their manifestos, which is an outrage. So people need to, even if you don't like all of our policies, no longer is this an argument about left, right, leave, remain. We, the people, need to stand up and say that we've had enough of this rubbish that we've endured for the last 14 years and further back from that. We deserve better politicians who have got the best interests of the people that they represent and not the best interests of big corporations and globalists. It's quite clear now what's going on. I mean, if I had my way, I would stop all lobbying as well, which hopefully Richard Tice will come up with a policy for, but we shall see. But I really do appeal to people, please don't think left, right anymore, leave, remain. Just stand up, look at some of our policies. If some of them appeal to you, vote for us. I am certainly not a career politician. I'm a business person. I've got a family. And I want the best for them and the best for your family. I don't want this rubbish to continue, which is getting more and more divisive, and dangerous, as far as I can tell. We need to stand together, stand up, and give the establishment, like we did with Brexit, we need to give them a bit of a shockwave and have a better life for all of us, and have honest politicians. And all of the reform PPCs, we're just ordinary people who want the best for you and the best for ourselves. So vote for us. And I do make people laugh. I say to people, vote for us or we're doomed. And that gets them laughing. But so that's always a good thing.
Well, I think you may be right. Because as you refer to the last 14 years, someone came up with this phrase, which I thought was brilliant, which is con socialists.
Yes.
Where are the true conservatives? The
Yes.
other the other wonderful privilege I have of having these conversations and others is meeting the candidates across the country, and they are as passionate as you are, and it's
Oops,
fascinating.
sorry.
Don't worry, we'll just put the phone back, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
It's, um, but it's but this is what is such a privilege in having these conversations, because I immediately am thinking, right, Beverly, talk to Rob Reaney. I'll put you in contact in Bolsover, because he is the infrastructure project they've got there of all these double glazing, as he calls it, all over the fields, and then building these power stations is reflecting on what is going on in your constituency.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that the wonderful thing is you can all start to talk to each other, and you are helping it. I'm observing that people are helping each other, saying, here's a template for a leaflet, do this, do that. And this advice is out there and it's getting you all to connect, even though I know you're against it time wise. The other thing is that when talking to all of you, of course, each constituency has different needs. Where you are, there is a huge, of course, farming industry. You'll talk to other people where it's a lot more urban, but the passion is the same where you are wanting to serve the community. As we come up to the last couple of minutes, Beverly, and thank you, how can people reach you? Could you give out email, point of contact that they can reach you?
My email address is southsuffolk@reformuk.com. And I've got a Facebook page, which is South Suffolk, Reform UK South Suffolk. And also Twitter, again, it's Reform UK, South Suffolk, Reform UK. So it's the normal sort of, I've not gotten onto TikTok or anything like that. I don't want to do it. So it's really Twitter, Facebook, and direct emailing. But also Reform UK have got a great website where you can go on to Reform UK and you can look on, find my PPC, and everyone can find who is going to be representing their constituency. And as Richard Tice says, we are fielding someone for every constituency. I think there's a couple of blank spaces, but on the whole, I think we're almost there. So everyone should have by now or within the next week a Reform UK PPC. So you can find them and email them directly.
And if you want to find out about TikTok, I think I've got the name right because I interviewed him, which is the wonderful Nick Taylor, who I believe that you know.
Yes,
And I
he's a
think
friend of mine. Yeah,
Nick is the TikTok king.
I
I
know
think
he
taught by his
is.
son. But this is what I am very encouraged by and very impressed by, because people are beginning to talk to each other, and I really want to encourage that, because it
Yeah.
helps to get the message out there. Um, Beverly, is there anything else that you want to say? Because you've covered the concerns about the lack of police, the fact that they are engaging with young people, which is fantastic. The business rates concerns, the strains that the infrastructure is having under immigration. I'll ask this question just finally in that sense. I mean, is there difficulty to people to find an appointment at their local doctor's surgery? Is that coming up in discussion?
Yeah, are having to wait too long for doctor's appointments and hospital appointments. It's just not good enough. We don't have a first-class health system anymore. It's very second-rate. It's, you know, hit and miss. You shouldn't be waiting weeks on end. You could be waiting 2 weeks for a doctor's appointment in some areas. I'm not 100% sure whether that is fact for South Suffolk, but I know in Cambridgeshire, you're definitely waiting sometimes up to 2 weeks just to see a doctor. It's just not good enough. And the whole of the NHS needs serious thought and grown-up conversations. I don't think you can be chucking money at it anymore. And I know for a fact there is so much waste that's going on in the NHS, and I'd like to know more about it. But I know that NHS trusts, this set me into orbit. I know this for a fact. NHS trusts are employing management companies. So, you know, management companies are people like Deloitte, KPMG, Ernst Young. These are very slick management companies, McKinsey. They are employing these types of companies at huge costs to the public purse to reduce waiting times because it's political. I mean, that is an outrage, and I'm waiting for an FOI request. I want to know how much money has been spent on these management companies for the last 5 years, because I think people will have their minds blown when they find out. I mean, I know about one waiting list and one bill, which is in the hundreds of thousands. It's simply not on. So what are these managers doing within the NHS? You know, if they're drawing huge salaries, why aren't they managing as they should be, as they're being paid to do? Why are they then writing out checks to external management companies? That makes no sense. So it does need, you know, it does need looking at. And I'd also like to, I mean, I'm not a healthcare professional, I'm an interior designer, I've just got common sense. But what is the drugs bill in the UK? More and more people that you speak to are now on antidepressants. What is going wrong in society and our lifestyles that's driving people, or doctors are just prescribing them like sweets? We need to get to the bottom of the problem, not just mask symptoms with drugs. The whole of society, the health, what we eat, how we live, needs a big shake-up, and Reform UK can do it. We could do it. We just need the chance. So you've got to vote for us. That's what I say to people.
Well said. I mean, you've just talked about subjects that are very dear to my heart. I'll just throw this out when you were touching earlier on the whole thing of sports facilities. And when you were younger, we were out there kicking football, playing. There were parks to
Yeah,
do that. And what, just out of interest, because it's just, you know, a sport I love, I do. I mean, access to swimming pools, for argument's sake, which is great exercise. Is there
yeah,
enough access to places like that within
no.
facilities like that within Suffolk?
Children should be encouraged. I mean, all sports, they should be given a chance to do all sports. When my son was growing up, during the summer holidays, I got together a load of us who wanted our kids to play cricket in the summer, and I employed a coach. And the kids went along twice a week and played cricket on the field for an hour. So children should be, you know, rugby, football, tennis, any sport, swimming. These should be free and easy to access for children. And I know that Baber Council do offer facilities for sports and for children to sign on to have free sessions. But again, I think parents are so bogged down, they might not have the time to research and see where they can sign their child onto. Their children should be allowed to just tip up and play during the whole of the summer holidays or Easter holidays or now half term. There should be designated fields. There should be, rather than spending 42,000 on a survey for something that we don't actually need in Sudbury, that money could have been spent on employing coaches to coach children during the summer holidays in whatever sport. It's not rocket science, it's pretty easy, but people need to be motivated. But again, it needs to be made very easy for parents who are having a very tough time at the moment. And again, they're not given a big enough voice in mainstream media, I don't think. There are no interviews with people that are really suffering from the energy crisis that's going on and generally struggling to make ends meet and going to food banks. It's an outrage that in the UK, the food bank situation, we shouldn't be having people going to food banks to feed their families. I,
Well,
I mean,
all I can encourage you to do is to, go out there with your phone, do some pieces to camera with your phone, interview some of these people,
yes, yes,
show
yeah,
the reality of it, and I do hope you can get some of these hustings off the ground, because this is very, very important, and get some
yeah.
publicity in the local paper. Beverly, I just want to thank you for joining me, and for giving me your time. And it's a real privilege for me to be able to do this and talk to other candidates, because it's in people are standing up. They actually want to make a difference. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for your invitation. Nice to have
No
met
problem.
you.
And you. I'll say goodbye to you over the other side, and I'll just play us out. So as Beverly would say, quite rightly, vote for her in the South Suffolk constituency, and we await to see what's going to happen over the next few weeks, because I think everyone's going to be rather busy. Yeah. Beverly, thank you. I'll play us out.
Okay.